You probably noticed that I've been making a lot of Ondo content over the last couple months, and it is because of all of the connections back to Ondo, from XRP to XLM to HBAR, and so many other great names. Ondo has been absolutely forging a path to not only becoming one of the biggest RWA giants this space has to offer, but also, to really kind of be successful on their push for Wall Street 2.0 to become a reality. And I do think that Ondo needs to be talked about a lot more because it is still extremely undervalued. But on top of it being extremely undervalued, I do think that it's on a path to becoming one of the most successful and largest RWA giants the space has to offer, and also utility-based projects as well. So with that being said, welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. So we are going to actually talk about why Ondo will be much bigger than what it is today. So let's first start off with what the price action looks like. Currently, we are trading well over $1, right? About roughly $1.02. So not extremely well over $1, but we're getting there. But one thing that I will mention about Ondo, and a lot of people actually overlook Ondo simply because of this, is that it does have a fully diluted value of roughly $10.25 billion. Now, I know what you guys are probably thinking. Well, that's already a massive market cap. What kind of upside potential could Ondo actually have? Well, we're going to circle back to that fully diluted value because that's something that will, persuade a lot of people to actually avoid Ondo. But I do think that that market cap, that fully diluted value, is minuscule compared to the names that are tied back to Ondo. So first and foremost, let's actually talk a little bit about the price chart, and then we'll come back to that in a bit. So I have been watching Ondo since it got back down into this wedge back in like roughly the beginning of March, and we started to kind of chop a bit, and I was waiting for this thing to break out, and we finally did on the 22nd. Now, I have been watching because we are getting very close to that first initial level. This is a level that we probably do run into a little bit of trouble initially, so we might chop a little bit. I wouldn't mind seeing us reject off of this first level, retest that upper trend line, and then bounce off of it, and then finally break above this key level, which is about roughly $1 and almost 10 cents, right? It's $1.09.5. But the second that we reclaim this level, I do think that it's going to be a very strong impulse move back to, $2 plus, just like we saw back in November once we broke this level. So I'm watching this, and I'm watching it very close over the next couple weeks. It could happen at any point, obviously. But after we do break over that dollar, it's almost like $1.10. Once we break over that, the next key level where I do suspect that there could be some trouble is about $1.45. And then after that, we just target the highs from December of last year, which is around $2.14, almost $2.15. And then from there, the sky is the limit. Now, again, a lot of people will say that the fully diluted value is going to keep Ondo, pretty cheap, and you're not going to see a lot of value. I still think that Ondo could hit $10. And if we're really kind of thinking about that, going off of the total supply, that would be about roughly $100 billion in market cap. Now, you might say, well, Nick, you're crazy. A lot of people thought that Ethereum holders were also crazy back in 2020 into 2021, and then we saw what Ethereum did. XRP is also a very, similar altcoin that has a massive supply that has hit, well over $100 billion in market cap. Solana hit over $100 billion in market cap. Dogecoin close to $100 billion in market cap. So you kind of get the idea here. But on top of the USD chart breaking out, the Bitcoin pair on the 1 week is extremely bullish because we are breaking over the first initial level here. And from that point, the next crucial key area of interest, well, if we're looking at this in terms of a percentage gain, let's actually look real quick from our current level. This is about roughly a 16-17% push. Now you might say, well, it's just a 17% push. This is a 17% push against Bitcoin, which means the upside potential on the USD chart could be significantly higher, which I do think that it would get it to this $1.45 level. So again, the upside potential here on the lower time frame is also bullish, but on the higher time frame, more macro wise, towards the end of the cycle, I still think that we could hit close to $10. Now let's talk about why. Number one, tokenized treasuries. So we have here that over 90% of all tokenized treasuries are issued by just 6 entities. And we could see the tokenized treasuries list here from Asari Crypto. And Ondo actually did quote this, and they said the tokenized treasuries market continues to expand, and Ondo is at the forefront with 2 products. USDY is the most widely held yield coin, and OUSG offers market-leading instant liquidity, together unlocking global 24/7 access to US Treasuries yield. The future of capital markets is on chain. And when we are actually looking at the tokenized treasuries list, we're at about $6.16 billion. Now we could see that Securitize is number 1, and number 2 is Ondo. So Ondo has already over $1 billion tied to it. They haven't been growing significantly over the last 30 days compared to like Securitize, which has a 30.4% gain over the last 30 days. But Ondo still has been making some moves. If we actually look at Ondo US dollar yield, this has actually dropped by about 2.2% on the last 30 days. The holders are still up 15,105, up 1.54% in the last 30 days. But the main thing is that they also have Ondo short-term US government bond fund, which this is actually up 8.23% on the last 30 days. The holders are up about 13.5%. And, you know, this has been one thing that I have been watching closely in terms of both of these products, just to kind of see where they are at. But these are the 2 main products of Ondo. We also know that they have been tokenizing stocks. We don't actually have those here just yet, I don't think. I wish that there was an easier way to actually track Ondo. But until this protocol which is coming soon, by the way, until that's available on rwa.xyz, we're not going to see Ondo on here. Like, for an example, under networks, Ondo's not listed under networks. It would be under protocols, which is why we have to track, most of what Ondo has on it just through the tokenized treasuries. But there's only 2 that we're seeing here, which means that they have another additional 10 RWA count tied to them that we just are not seeing here, because again, it's almost like impossible to track Ondo on here unless we go through all of these additional asset classes. But even then, you don't really see Ondo on those lists. So I would love to get a little bit more of a glimpse into what's on Ondo. It's probably tokenized stocks through their global markets. But so far, Ondo has been absolutely killing the game around tokenized treasuries. Now, on top of that, Ondo Finance was recently in DC. The team behind Ondo was in DC today, meeting with the SEC Crypto Task Force to discuss tokenization and the future of digital asset regulation. We look forward to collaborating with regulators on shaping a thoughtful framework for digital assets. And again, we already know that Ondo is embedded within the US through a lot of the names that they're already working with. They're working with some of the largest Wall Street giants, and their Wall Street 2.0 push really looks as though it's going to be extremely successful by the names behind it, which we'll get to there, in a second. But what's interesting is the SEC Crypto Task Force, right? So we know that this was mainly the initial roundtable was mainly focused on crypto custody. I'm actually focused on the next roundtable, which is going to be happening on May 12th, and it's titled Tokenization Moving Assets on Chain, where TradFi and DeFi meet. Now, there's not a lot of information behind this one just yet. I do suspect that there will be a lot more information tied to this once we get closer to that date. The same with the other meetings and events that they did have listed, like for an example, this one, right? So this one actually had a lot more information tied to it after the fact, or even around closer to the date where it was actually taking place. And I think that that's going to be the same thing with this tokenization one. I wouldn't be surprised if Ondo was working closely with the SEC in a way to really kind of say like, hey, this is possible right now. We just need a little bit more, regulation in place, and we need to have, the market open up a little bit more. But Ondo's already killing it with some of the biggest names out there. Like, for an example, this was back in October of just last year. So Ondo Finance works with Libera to provide intraday liquidity for tokenized US Treasury Fund. This is actually with Wellington Management. Wellington Management, and let me actually put this into dark mode. Sorry for blinding you guys. They actually have $1.4 trillion in assets under management as of 2022. On top of that, we know that, and this was just recently as well. This was on February 6th. So Wall Street 2.0, Ondo Finance unveils integrated infrastructure suite to bring U.S. financial markets onto the blockchain. And then down here, we do have the Ondo ecosystem already includes notable industry leaders such as BlackRock, PayPal, and Morgan Stanley. Now, if we're thinking about some of these additional names that they just recently announced, including like Franklin Templeton, Wellington Management, Wisdom Tree, Google Cloud, ABN AMRO, Ion, and even McKinsey, like all of these names are massive, massive names, not just around traditional finance, but also even around traditional markets. But also BlackRock, right? BlackRock has $11.5 trillion in assets under management tied to them. Morgan Stanley has $1.67 trillion tied to them. And then also Franklin Templeton, which, we already know is working with them. Like this was back on February, 3rd. This was all around BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, Wellington Management, and even Wisdom Tree. Like Franklin Templeton has $1.37 trillion tied to them as well. So when we're thinking about all of these names, it's like what, $15 trillion just by the names alone that are tied back to Ondo. And what's crazy is that Ondo right now has a fully diluted value of $10.18 billion. And a lot of people will consider this a massive valuation for a project like Ondo. But then when you really look into things, it's actually not a massive valuation. It's something that's pretty small compared to the total addressable market. Like tokenization itself, we already heard from players like BlackRock that has, like they've told us that tokenization is not going to stop at 1 billion, let alone 1 trillion. Some of these markets that they want to tokenize, global real estate, $300+ trillion, equities, over $100 trillion. Derivatives are also being tokenized. That's in the quadrillions of dollars. So when we think about what's really happening here, I would argue that Ondo is undervalued. And I think that Ondo would still be undervalued even if it was at $100 billion because, again, we're talking trillions here. While some of these projects are barely scratching the surface of 10 billion, let alone, $1 trillion. Like think about how much more growth this space has, tied to it. And even tokenization, like when we actually think about the market itself, $21.62 billion tied to tokenized, products. Again, this value is minuscule. Think about stablecoins. Stablecoins have almost $231 billion tied to them, and the total RWAs on chain is just a little over $20 billion. That's wild to me. So you could see that we have a lot more work to do. We are just seeing droplets of water in a bucket right now. I do suspect going forward, Ondo will be integrated with even bigger names. I think that Ondo is going to become a much bigger piece of the financial system in a sense of, really kind of bringing Wall Street 2.0 to life. I think that that's one of the biggest things that we, have in front of us. If we're really thinking about it, Wall Street 2.0, like think about how crazy that is of a statement. At the same exact time that we've heard from BlackRock, right? Larry Fink said he wants every stock, every bond, all of that could be on chain. It could be tokenized. Vlad Tenev from Robinhood has also been talking about tokenization, saying that, stocks will be tokenized. Every single stock could easily be tokenized on chain. Like this is happening in real time. Ondo's absolutely killing it. They have a full stack under their belt. Like if you actually think about what Ondo actually has to offer, I can't launch the app because, I'm in the US, but I do think that eventually, considering the fact that they are working with the SEC, they're in talks with the SEC, I think that it's going to be available in the US as well. But they have a whole bunch of offering under their belt. Nexus, they have global markets. Then they also have a few other things tied to them as well. I mean, they are absolutely killing the game. Ondo is going to be a big player in my opinion. I think everyone should focus on Ondo at this current point. In the last 7 days, it's up about 21%, but in the last month, it's roughly 11%. And then this is the last year. Again, we're pretty flat here. The breakout is starting. I would argue focus on a potential retest just under $1. We might get one more stab at it. But I still think that Ondo should be something that anyone out there that's really kind of, fully focused on utility, I think everyone should be watching this one. Add it to the watch list, focus on it, see what they're doing, do a little bit more research, and I'm telling you guys, you're gonna fall in love with what Ondo's doing because they're absolutely killing the game. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely like, subscribe, turn notifications on if you guys have more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord on the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.